Welcome to our Resources for Teaching World Languages Remotely webinar broadcast. Today is Wednesday, March 18th, and we are beginning at 4 p.m. Here is today's agenda, and I am your presenter. My name is Anne-Marie Gunter. I'm your World Languages Consultant at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. We're going to begin today with a welcome and overview. Then we're going to talk about the NC Remote Learning website and resources available for all teachers. After that, we'll look at technology resources for teaching world languages online, then multilingual resources, and then language-specific resources. We'll finish up with some reminders and resources in general for us as professionals, and then we'll take any remaining questions. As I noted prior to this, I'm happy to stay on the line today until we get all questions answered the best we can, even if that goes a little late. I do appreciate your patience because I am the only one broadcasting today from this side. Let's get started by finding out what your goals are with today's webinar. Are you a teacher leader sharing information with colleagues? Are you an administrator gathering materials for local presentations? Are you an educator earning a contact hour for licensure renewal? Are you an individual getting a question answered? Or are you someone wanting a break from our isolation and quarantine on a Wednesday afternoon? You can check all that apply. I'm going to go ahead and run our questions on the polls. You'll be able to click your answer on the screen, whatever you want to answer, whichever answers apply to you. I see that almost everyone has put in their responses. Please remember with GoToWebinar, if you want to get a certificate for your participation today, you do need to actively participate. And one way you can do that is always participating in the polls. Just click on the screen for the answers that you want to use for what are your goals with today's webinar. All right, we're going to close this out, and I'm going to share the responses with you so you know what everyone's goals are today. As you can see, over half of you are here as educators earning a contact hour for licensure renewal. That's often a reason that people come to our World Language Webinar Series broadcast. I will remind you that our broadcast today is 1 hour, so that you'll be earning 1 contact hour or 0.1 CEUs. You'll get that information in the form of an email approximately 2 hours after we finish our broadcast today, and it will have a certificate. Please keep your email receipt and the certificate to turn in to your professional development office or your licensure office. Please also note that sometimes districts and charter schools must approve professional development activities. All right, I also see that 60% of you are a teacher leader sharing information with your colleagues. It's wonderful that you're wanting to share information with others. About a third of you each answered you're an individual getting a question answered, or you're just someone wanting a break from our isolation and quarantine on a Wednesday afternoon. And I certainly understand that too. There's 1 or 2 of you who are also an administrator gathering materials for local presentations. And again, like I said before we began, all of these materials will be posted. The slides that you see, the hyperlinks, the recording of this broadcast, everything will be posted on our World Language website. And you will get a follow-up email telling you where it's been posted so you can access it for your local work. All right, let's go ahead and hide our questions and continue on with our broadcast. So let's get started today with our NC Remote Learning website. Some of you who are on the listserv probably got the messages that were sent out from NCDPI yesterday about NC Remote Learning. This is a website that has been put together with a number of resources for us to use as part of our work with students as we continue through our school closings and changes in our daily routine as teachers. So I would encourage you to go to the Google site you see there to explore those resources that are being posted by our NCDPI's Digital Teaching and Learning Division. As you can see, they have a number of categories to look at. They have instructional resources, they have leadership resources, they have online pedagogy information, they have information about learning management systems, they have details about mobile devices, internet access, shared resource, and then frequently asked questions. One thing I would encourage you to think about is how you could use these resources in general. Many of these resources are very, very, very much focused on the questions we all have about moving our instruction online, although they're not world language specific. Someone had asked me earlier about things like student privacy with using online tools and so forth, and I think that's where you would find the answers to those kinds of questions that are just general questions about teaching online or instructing online. So again, I encourage you to go there. I will just click out briefly. Notice, by the way, that the way I've set up our slide set is that the links you see on the screen are also in the notes if you download them as PowerPoint slides or make a copy of the Google Slides. And also hyperlinked on the screen. So I can hit almost anything and it will take us to the websites or the places we're talking about. And that should make it easy for you, even if you download up the PDF of this and want to use it on a device, for example. So you can see that they have a lot of information here. They have a left-hand side navigation bar. And then as I'm scrolling down, you can see where I got that other screenshot of the different categories that they have things sorted into for you to find what you need. Also notice that they did a webinar and they posted the recording of all of the resources and things that are here and how they've structured them. So I would encourage you to take a look at that and or the slide deck for it so that you understand more about that resource. So that's our general resource. And like I said, that information was shared out from NCDPI on almost every listserv I think we have, including our world language listservs yesterday. So you have links and a number of details about what's there on the NC Remote Learning website. However, when I thought about our needs as world language educators, I wanted us to have some other resources available too. One of the things that's happening is that across the Southeast, and you see on that map there, is we have highlighted our state of North Carolina, but also our northern neighbors in Virginia, our southern neighbor of South Carolina and Georgia. That group works together as a Southern Atlantic Language Collaborative, or SALC group. And so my colleagues, the people who have the same position I do in those states, we all work kind of like a professional learning community or PLC together throughout the year on any shared initiatives that we have for world language education. When we spoke last week, we talked about having a COVID-19 resource bank for our teachers about understanding how to teach online or maybe getting details about that so that they could more easily make that happen. As we discussed that idea and actually started building a spreadsheet together through a Google Drive, we decided that we needed more input. And so we shared that information with the National Council of State Supervisors for Languages, or NCSSFL. That's our national group, and they're all across the country. You can see on the map coming up. Any state that is blue on there right now has someone at their Department of Education, like I am for you in North Carolina. If it's a green state or a green state with white stripes, they have someone there, but they may be retired or they may be an associate member, so maybe working with a university rather than Department of Education. But you can see we cover the US. And so we shared this information out and honestly shared the Google spreadsheet out and said, please help us build this information for our teachers so that we can all use it to share with educators in our states. And so that's what I'm sharing with you today. It is our NCSSFL COVID-19 resource bank, and it's specifically resources I have pulled from there and posted for us on our North Carolina website so that you can get to them easily. So when we talk about the Accessible COVID-19 Resource Bank being on our NCDPI World Languages Google site, I've actually created a bit.ly link for you to follow. It's just bit.ly/COVID194WL, or for World Languages. And this will be a quick way, I hope, for you to get there. You can go there right now if you would like. I'm going to pause just a moment because I know some of you are probably going there now. And I will also put the bit.ly link in our chat box so it goes out to everyone. There you go. Go ahead and click on that when you can, and then go out to that space. Now, do stay with me on that if you can. Keep yourself from exploring the resources. As I said, these resources have been pulled from the Accessible COVID-19 Resources Bank, and they come from various educators, groups, organizations, and publications involved with world language education. We have been very selective in what we have chosen to put here. We made sure it was from either a world language educator that we know and who publishes or posts quality information, let's say on social media or in publications. We have also gone to our professional organizations and other groups that help world language educators, and you'll see that as we go through the resources, because many of them do post materials on their website and other places for their teachers, even if they're language specific. And so we have sort of gone out and mined that, if you will. We continue to do so with our national colleagues because the map I showed you of the country and all of our successful members is really tremendous when we do a project like this, because we have literally over 30 people at a time usually pulling resources and adding information to our spreadsheet that then we can pull out and share in our states. Also, I wanted to make sure I emphasize that the inclusion of any resources on these lists does not constitute endorsement or verification by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. This is a disclaimer, but it's an important thing to think about. These resources are being shared because they're often shared for free, online, on the internet, in social media. But it is up to you as a teacher, always with your expertise, to look through these to verify that they are what you need and that they're useful and pertinent resources to your work with students. Finally, these lists are organized by category. Although I will tell you there is some overlap in that, and I sometimes had to think very hard about which particular page to put a resource on or how to categorize it. And that may change as we go and know more about each resource. I do encourage you to check back often to see new resources, and we'll discuss later in the broadcast, but my plan is to pull additional resources and post them from our Accessible COVID-19 Resource Bank at least once a day until we are at the end of the school year, or there are not a lot of new resources being posted. So I imagine I'll be doing quite a bit of posting here in the next several weeks and for probably a while. So let's take a look at our COVID-19 resources page. I hope most of you are there. And I did leave the bit.ly link there visible for you, and I have here just a layout of our page. I want to take a moment and make sure you're all there. So once again, if you are on our COVID-19 resources page on the World Languages website, please go ahead and raise your hand electronically so that I can see that. All right, very good. All right, thank you for that. One thing I want to point out to you right away, and you obviously may have found it, and that's great, is that I have organized our resources into three main categories. And that was based on how they're organized in the Accessible COVID-19 Resource Bank that I'm pulling them from. But it's also based on how we work here in North Carolina and how I imagine you will work at, particularly as teachers or even administrators, in helping get things set up for your students the way you need to. So our three categories are technology resources for teaching world languages online, multilingual resources, and language-specific resources. You can see kind of the brief definitions for each of those, and we're going to go through each area just so you'll see what's there and you can ask any questions. All right, so let's stop a moment and collect our thoughts. Which of these statements is true for you? Again, you can check all that apply. So, have you accessed or explored the NC Remote Learning site already? Have you found the COVID-19 resources landing page? Are you bookmarking the COVID-19 resources landing page? Have you already clicked on one of the three categories we have? Or maybe you just want to say, hang on, I'm still getting organized a bit. Let's go ahead and do that poll question, and then I'll answer any individual questions that we have in the questions box. Once again, you can click all that apply for you just by clicking on the answers on your screen as they appear. All right, it looks like almost everyone has voted. Please go ahead and get any last minute votes you have or responses you want to share. I see several of you, but not many, have had trouble accessing the link. I'm not sure why that is. It could be a number of things. What I would ask you to do is just follow along in what we show on the screen. And of course, you'll get an email follow-up with a link right in the email and specific directions to the website where everything is posted. So you'll get the information eventually. Please try not to get worried if you're having a little bit of trouble at the moment. All right, let's go ahead and close our poll and share the responses. All right. So well over half of you said you found the COVID-19 resources landing page. Wonderful. Over half of you also said you're bookmarking that for later use. And almost half of you said you've already clicked on one of the three categories. That's great. You are welcome to do that. But again, be sure you do come back and check for updated resources. I also see over 40% of you have accessed or explored the NC Remote learning site, which is good. Again, a lot of good resources there. And a few of you are still kind of working on it. About a quarter of you who said, hang on, I'm still getting organized a bit. I do have a reminder, by the way, for those of you who are trying to work with the link, which is in our chat box, is available to everyone. Keep in mind that all bit.ly links are case sensitive. And so if something is capitalized, it must be capitalized when you type it in. That is an important part of bit.ly links or shortened URLs in general. All right, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and hide that question, and we'll get started with exploring our resources. The first one I want to show you is the Technology Resources for Teaching World Languages Online. This is linked specifically from our COVID-19 Resources for World Languages page. You can see the navy blue button, and obviously this one has information about moving world language instruction online. You see there on the left a screenshot of the actual page for our Technology Resources for Teaching World Languages Online. And that you see as of today, there are 13 links in 2 categories. I've divided them up between technology platforms, tools and how-to, and guidance and tips. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what that is like. Here's our page coming up on your screen now. There's a reminder about where these resources come in that navy blue bar. And I'll make that a little bit larger so it's probably easier to see on your screen as you're looking on. And a repeat about what is here, about information about moving world language instruction online. For the technology platforms, tools, and how-to, I have just listed things by their title of the resource alphabetically. We had to pick one way to organize it, and that's what we picked. So please take a look. As you can see, again, these are resources either being shared by world language educators or from publications and resources that we all know and trust, but have applicable information for world language education. I would encourage you to look through these and see what's there that could be useful to you. One thing we had talked about early on, in fact, last week we'd posted on the Facebook page if you saw that, is this slide deck here about pandemic prepping in the language class. And this was actually put together by a university. They provide a whole slide deck and a recording of their webinar about the tools they're using to move their instruction online. There's also information about tools that are being offered for free, actually from vendors, like Zoom is being offered to schools for a limited time through the end of the school year, and some information about how to teach using some of those tools, like teaching languages via Zoom that I'm highlighting here, or other areas. I would encourage you to explore these and think about what you want to do, what would make your teaching life easier, and maybe some things you can explore over time. There may be new things you want to try. This may or may not be the week for, but at least you know there are some things like, for example, how to teach remotely with Google Slides HyperDoc. That basically tells you how to use Google Slides in a relatively unique way to kind of put a class online. And there's other things here that you may want to see. We did have a question about the going online in the time of Corona information. That's a collection of educational technology tools. It's included here for 2 reasons, because it falls under technology tools, and that's our category, of course, but also because it has been put together by Karen Tharrington, who was a professor at North Carolina State University for many years, who now lives abroad. And she knows of our situation here and is putting together these tools for teachers she has trained through NC State and others. We did have a question earlier from someone talking about Flipgrid and its use with students. The person actually said they were told by their tech department in their county and their district that they could not use Flipgrid because it was considered social media. And so their question is, you know, can they use it if it's on this site? And the answer is no. You must follow all of the requirements and recommendations of your local district or school. It's always important to follow those. These materials are just posted for your reference if you can use them. And so I encourage you to use what you can, but if, of course, you have policies or procedures in place that restrict you from using certain ones, you will still need to follow that. Also, on this page, we have a category called guidance and tips. And these were just articles mainly, or collections of information, some Pinterest boards and different things that had some really good tips, and I wouldn't say tricks, but tips and information about things to keep in mind when you work online with world language classes or when you work online in general. So I would encourage you to read some of those if you want. Particularly ones like, for example, the last one there, what teachers in China have learned in the past month. That's an Edutopia article from an American teacher who's currently in China and so has been through what we are currently experiencing. with COVID-19 and moving her work online with students. So there's a lot of good, realistic, and practical tips in that information. All right. I'm just taking a look at our questions box. We have people chatting back and forth. I wish I could make the questions box free chat for all of you, but several people are commenting on different tools and how much they like them. For example, Flipgrid and Modo and some of the things that are mentioned here on this page that we're looking at. And another person said, well, if um, your tech department or your policies don't, cover some of those tools that you're seeing, you might want to ask your local folks if they would reconsider. That's something to contemplate. Um, and I would encourage you to contact them locally via email, of course, um, so that you can find out that information and see if things could change. But again, you do need to follow all of your local guidelines and policies that are in place, particularly when you work online with students. All right. All right. So thank you for sharing that. Now that we've had a look at our technology resources for teaching world languages online page, I wanted to ask you, what did you find on the technology resources for teaching world languages online page that you could respond to? Did you find a resource you already knew about? Did you find a link you want to use right away? Did you find an article or info to share with someone else? Do you have a resource that needs to be shared on this page that isn't listed? Or did you see a problem? Maybe there was a typo, broken link, or something like that to fix. Let's go ahead and share with each other what you found on the page we just looked at for our resources. All right, let's go ahead and finish up our poll. Go ahead and get your answers into these questions. Remember, again, it's a check all that apply for you. So as you're exploring this one page we've looked at, what have you found? All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out our poll questions and then share the responses. Great. It looks like almost 70% of you found a resource on that page that you already knew about. That's great to know that you're finding those resources already and posting them. I know for me, when we first started collecting them into the resource bank, I was finding them online in all kinds of places. And it was nice to have them sort of all drawn into one and to have other people looking for them too. Also, it looks like over half of you found a link you want to use right away, and that's great. I always hope that you'll find things that will be useful to you in your work when you come to our broadcasts. And finally, almost half of you found an article or info you want to share with somebody else, and that's wonderful. Passing along this information is so important. I've had a couple of more questions about when these materials will be posted and that kind of thing. Keep in mind, like I said, that all of this is live right now on our World Languages website for the state, but also I will be sending you a link as well as links to the folks who registered but weren't able to attend of where these materials are posted on our website. So you'll have a recording of this broadcast, you'll have the slides and the hyperlinks to use. So that will all be available. All right. Thank you for responding to the poll question. Let's go on and see what else we have. The next page we've created is the multilingual resources. And these are materials and activities that are adaptable for any language. And that's good in North Carolina because we have almost 20 languages that are taught K-12, and we could have more any day or any time that a local district or school decided to add one. So these are materials, as you can see on the screenshot there on the left, that are organized a bit differently, no categories this time, but as of today, there are 8 links on this page. Once again, I'm just going to click on the button, the hyperlinks here, but you can click on that button from the main page, and you go to our multilingual resources page as you see. As I said, these are materials and activities that are adaptable for any language. There's a reminder about our disclaimer. And then there are 8 different things posted. Notice the first one is AATSP, the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese. They actually have a list of multilingual websites, over 400, for teachers of world languages in general. So not just Spanish and Portuguese, but in fact, things that everyone can use. And so they've got those, and we've got that linked. There are also other things like Castles at the University of Oregon's Games to Teach website with downloadable activities, some Pinterest boards where there are materials and things like that to share with students in a variety of languages. There is a new Facebook group for those of you who do dual language immersion or DLI that is dedicated to supporting online learning for our DLI students K-12. In addition, there have been some other things created by some of our well-known teachers, people who've been Teachers of the Year or who are prominent nationally in our publications. That's the case with the Language Practice Choice Board. That's from Leslie Grand. Some of you may know her. And so she has a lot of, as she says, intentionally generic, non-language specific, and ready to use without teacher prep or paid subscriptions. These are tasks that are designed to appeal to Gen Z, our Generation Z. And as she says, you can download it and customize it for your students. There's also things like open culture language lessons, information from AP, the Advanced Placement Group at College Board about supporting student learning during school closure, and a link to virtual field trips and experiences from around the world. So there are a lot of things posted here that might be of interest to you, and I would encourage you to explore them. I'm seeing a couple of questions, and I want to address that. There are people asking about certain things that might go on this page, for instance, the multilingual resources. For example, there are some apps. One of them that was mentioned was Duolingo. I typically do not add things that are specific vendor products unless they're free to this list, and that is simply because materials aren't put into the Necessful COVID-19 resource bank unless they meet those criteria. There may be some articles that talk about the use of some of those apps, whether it's that one or any others. But again, that's something for you to discern as a teacher, whether it's right for you and which resources you want to tap into. So you're welcome to access that and go with that information that's there. All right. So when it comes to our multilingual resources, I have the same questions for you. What did you find on that page? Did you find a resource you knew about, a link to use right away, an article info to share with someone else, or so on? I'm going to go ahead and launch that question so you can share what you've found and how you're going to use it. All right, it looks like we're getting a little faster at our responses. Please go ahead and get in your votes about what you found on the Multilingual Resources page to work with. All right, let's go ahead and finish up with this poll. Get your responses in. I am seeing some notes that folks are having trouble seeing the screen or they don't see the poll. I would encourage you to make sure you are seeing what we're broadcasting. We do have up the audience view is the poll right now. If you're not, something may have minimized or gotten hidden behind something else open on your computer. If you look in the tray at the bottom or side of your screen, you should see the go-to icon. You can click on that and it will bring everything back up to the top. So if you're having that trouble, please go ahead and take a look. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out our poll for now. And then share our responses. All right, this time, over 70% of you said you found a link to use right away. I'm so glad to hear that. There's a lot of things that we're posting, and I want to make sure they're useful things for you here. And I hope you'll give yourselves the time to look through it and really learn about what's there for you to use in your classroom. Also, over half of you, 53%, said you found an article or info you're going to share right away. And almost half of you, 46%, found a resource you already knew about. So that's good to hear too, that these are things that you're familiar with. Some of the things I'm seeing in the questions box, people are commenting that they love the virtual field trips one because their students will enjoy it, and also everyone can afford a virtual field trip because it's free. I also see a question about, are some of the resources for elementary students? And the answer is yes, they are. Sometimes there will be a specific note in the brief description about that for what students are targeted at. And sometimes as you read through, you may be reading something from an elementary teacher talking about how he or she used that with elementary students. Some of that will be more prominent when we go to the language specific resources page too. I also see several of you saying that there's a resource that needs to be shared and you're typing that in the questions box. Thank you so much for adding that. I will check with my national colleagues to see if we can add that to our COVID-19 resources bank nationally, and then of course post it here on our pages for North Carolina once we get the green light or the go ahead to do that. So I do appreciate your help with that. All right, let's go ahead and hide this poll and move on to the next part of our presentation. All right, the last page we have is the language-specific resources linked from our main landing page. There you have, just once again, a screenshot up on the left and a screenshot of the button. The language-specific resources are websites with resources for one or more of the 18 world languages being taught in North Carolina. As of today, 3/18/20, there are over 30 links on this page organized for 10 different languages. So there's a lot here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this to go out to that page so we can start looking at it together. Once again, we have our disclaimers and our reminders to always make sure that you can use this information the way you need to. We do not endorse it or verify it here at NCDPI. But I'm just going to kind of go through. Notice that I have posted here what has been shared in our Necessal COVID-19 resource bank for each language. Sometimes there's one or two things for a language, and sometimes there are many things, and it depends on the language. As I'm sure you might guess, our more commonly taught languages have more resources that have already been submitted. Our less commonly taught languages don't have as much just yet, but I will check daily so that when resources are added, they can be added here. My goal, of course, would be to have several resources for all 18 of our languages. So we'll see how close we get to that by the end of our situation with COVID-19. For Chinese, we have a couple of things. For French, there are a number of things. And for those of you who are asking about things for younger children, particularly for French and Spanish, you'll see some things that are targeted for younger students, some of them like ages 5 to 10 or specifically elementary students. We also have several German resources, Hindi, Italian, Japanese, and I will tell you, I just got a note right before we started this webinar about the Japanese resources, and there being some new ones to post, so those will be up soon. We have several resources too for Latin and Ancient Greek, our classical languages, Portuguese, and then Spanish. So there's quite a lot there. I'm going to pause for a moment and give you a chance to explore this page for a bit before we move on to the next part of our webinar and things. So go ahead and do your exploration. I'm going to go ahead and respond to questions as well, but I want you to take some time, pick maybe just one thing here for a language that you work with. Maybe you teach it, maybe you oversee it, and see what's there that will help you. All right. Thank you to everyone who's adding information into the questions box about the things that you're finding on this page that are language specific resources you can use with your students, as well as your suggestions for other things to add. So I'm always glad to know that you're looking out for that and wanting to share even more. Let's go ahead and move to our question. You know how these questions work by now for our pages. What did you find on a language specific resources page? And again, to check all you apply. Is it a resource you already knew about, a link to use right away, an article to share with someone else, a resource that needs to be shared on this page, or a problem? I'll go ahead and launch our last poll question before we finish out for today. All right, go ahead and get in your last responses for this question so that we can close it out and we can move on and end our webinar on time today. Remember, part of earning your certificate for participation today is actively participating, and you can do that by answering the poll questions. All right, we're going to close those out and then share all the answers. It looks like over 80% of you said you found a link to use right away. That's wonderful to hear. As I said, we'll be posting more information about language specific resources, but I'm glad you found something already that you can use. Over 60% of you found an article or information to share with someone else, with a colleague or someone like that. Over half of you, 53%, said you found a resource you already knew about. So that's good too. That means you're staying up on what's available and things that you can use. 5% said you have a resource that needs to be shared, and I see those coming in. So I will gladly share those back with my national colleagues, and hopefully we can add that to our Successful COVID-19 Resource Bank nationally, as well as our materials posted here for North Carolina. And finally, one of you found a problem, a typo, a broken link, and that's great. I always need more eyes on the things that we post on the website. So I hope you'll put that in, and I will make sure that you are able to, I'm able to get that fixed for you, and you're able to see it posted correctly. Thank you so much for your help. All right. Let's go ahead and finish out. I just wanted to remind you that our COVID-19 resource page, our COVID-19 for World Languages page has this bit.ly link. And remember, this page and its subpages will continue to grow on a regular basis. My plan is to check it and make updates and changes once a day as I'm getting more information nationally, and also as I go through our information from this webinar and your suggestions and changes. If you do have information, new resources to link, ideas for categories or how we should organize this material, or any fixes for typos or anything, please email me at ann.gunter@dpi.nc.gov. You'll get that information too in the email that follows, but always know that. And then the information about that in that navy blue link you see across the page is at the bottom of each of our resource pages. So you can always get that information and know what you need to do if you want to share something else. That brings us to the end of our resource pages, and I want to finish up with you today with a few reminders and other resources that we always have available to us so that you know what's out there and what to expect. First and foremost, this is part of our regular world language webinar series for this school year. I did take our world language quarterly update webinar for today and kind of reframe it so that we could focus on the resources we need for the COVID-19 situation that we're all dealing with in our schools. But I wanted to remind you that we will have one more World Language Best Practices Series webinar. That'll be on April 22nd. All of our webinars that you see posted here are from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, usually on Wednesdays for World Language Wednesdays. That World Language Best Practices webinar will focus on classical languages, by the way. The one in February focused on dual and heritage languages, and the one in December focused on modern languages. Also, we may or may not, depending on how things come together, have another webinar about Linguafolio at the end of April, and I put April 29th or 30th as potential dates. And we may have some information that's more of our World Language Quarterly Update Series webinar on May 6th. As I'm sure you're dealing with, I'm dealing with a lot of changes, and certainly access to online broadcasting systems like GoToWebinar is one of them. So I hope to be able to add on some webinars this year for us to be together again this way, but we'll have to see. But for sure, April 22nd will happen. In addition, I don't want you to forget that our GLE, the Global Languages Endorsement that our graduating seniors can earn, which is our state seal by literacy, that has a whole page all of its own on the World Languages website. I encourage you to go to that page. It's under the Policies tab. It also has its own bit.ly link, as you see there on the screen, bit.ly/NCSealGLE. Our class of 2019 data and details is there from the webinar we did in January about that. And also we're looking forward to the class of 2020's information being posted as we go into our next school year. Always available on the World Languages Google site, and you see the bit.ly link just for the main Google site, the main landing page, are things about upcoming professional development or PD and opportunities for educators and students. Under upcoming professional development, I always encourage you to look at the K20 PD list page that's under the professional development tab. I do send information out on the listservs with reminders about that. As you might imagine, this page is undergoing tremendous changes as some of our conferences and meetings are being canceled or repurposed into virtual meetings. So please check this page soon for updates on new webinars that can be offered during this time. And also summer opportunities when things may be different with our situation. Also, for opportunities for educators and students, these are things like awards, contests, grants, scholarships, and so forth. They're posted on the K20 opportunities list by their deadline so that you have that. And again, I send those out during my regular listserv messages to you so that you have that information and can go to those pages as you need to get information and build the things for your classroom and for your own professional growth and professional development. Finally, I invite all of you to subscribe to the World Language Listservs. You may have gotten information about this webinar today because you're already on them, but I encourage you always to subscribe to listservs for world languages. We have 4 listed there, one for DLI educators, one for Linguafolio, one for World Language Instructors K20, and one for World Language Education News in a general sense. There are other listservs, things for charter schools, global education, legislative updates, teachers of English learners, and so on and so forth. You can always go to the bit.ly link, bit.ly/NCDPI updates to sign up for any of the listserv announcements that you want, including things like the NC remote learning sites and all of that we talked about earlier in the broadcast. Finally, this is my contact information. I want to remind you, I'm always here for you with NCDPI World Languages. You can reach me by email. You see that on the screen. I also encourage you to link to the website. You see there the actual URL as well as the bit.ly link for it. And we do have an NCDPI World Languages Facebook page where I often post resources like we've just looked at individually as we find out about them and want to share them in different ways. So I also have a reminder about where things are posted. I generally post our webinar broadcast, the archives for them, on our webinar series information page under the professional development tab, which is what's circled there on our screenshot. I will be posting this broadcast in the archives there, but also on the COVID-19 resources landing page that we looked at today together. So all of that will be there. That does conclude our webinar today. I thank you again for joining us and sharing all of the things that you're doing to make things work for your students this school year during this very uncertain time that we're in. I also wanted to add that it's important to take care of each other. Please make sure that you check in with your colleagues, particularly your teaching colleagues that you used to see every day. One of the things that I have been reading over and over again about moving online is to keep those social connections going, even when we have to use social distancing. And we can do those things through different platforms as well, and make sure that we're keeping in contact with each other. So with that, I wish you a good evening. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our recording.